I'm a PhD student at Northwestern University, and I study personality psychology. Last summer, I attended an academic conference in Warsaw, and afterwards I visited Berlin and Prague for a week total. Prague was just for 2 nights at the end of my trip. Before arriving, I researched the city in order to be efficient with my time there. In my research, I discovered that not many businesses in Prague had Yelp reviews. As a personality psychologist in training, I can assure you that a Yelp review is a great estimate of how much you'll enjoy a business. Yelp uses what is called a mean model. Lots of other businesses use the mean model to predict how much you'll enjoy your experience, like Amazon, Airbnb, and Pornhub. The mean model predicts that you will enjoy a business by the mean, or average amount, that other people enjoy it. That is an accurate prediction because across probability distributions of all kinds of psychometrics, a consistent pattern has emerged in research. For any given variable, most people are average, and every single one of us is average in almost every way. We tend to focus on aspects of ourselves that are unique and above average, but we're ignoring most of the data that indicate otherwise. And often when we are not average, we are below average. A weakness of the mean model is that it treats all of the idiosyncrasies of individuals as meaningless error. Mean models for online reviews like Yelp completely disregard the rich tapestry of narratives embedded in user comments. So, for the benefit of Yelp's mean model, I've given numerical scores to 3 businesses I visited in Prague. For the benefit of posterity, I've also written 3 reviews that I will now share with you. My first review is for Naked Tour Guides. 5 out of 5 stars. Despite the raunchy name of the company, my guide Imogen was fully clothed. I was only in Prague for 2 nights, and the first night I decided to go on a tour of the famous Prague Castle. I enjoyed the tour so much that I signed up for the next day's tour of the city. Imogen had an encyclopedic knowledge of Prague history. There were only a couple other customers on each of the tours, which made my time with Imogen feel more like a conversation and less like a lecture. Plus, the sense of friendship that formed between Imogen and me was welcome because my girlfriend of 3 years had broken up with me a month earlier. As a psychology researcher, it's often my job to quantify abstract concepts, like grief, bitterness, and emotional distress. I have tried to quantify the impact of the breakup in different ways, but the one that really seems to capture it is that I had wept more in the month since our breakup than in the previous 20 years of my life. I have to admit, though, that statistic is a bit misleading. 20 years ago, I heavily downsized my weeping so my friends and family would stop calling me a crybaby. On my brief trip through Europe, I saw such beautiful works of art, ate so much good food, and walked along so many romantic cobblestone streets. Within every experience, my mind always came back to how alone I was and how much happier I would have been if my ex-girlfriend were there holding my hand. The time I spent with Imogen tricked me into believing that I had finally found a friend in the middle of an otherwise empty and squandered trip abroad. And that made Naked Tour Guides the brightest spot on my vacation. My final review is for the Minkovna restaurant, 1 out of 5 stars. This establishment was recommended to me by Naked Tour Guides, see other Yelp review, and described as traditional Czech fare that is a bit higher class. That's a fine description. The last night I was in Prague, I was able to secure a table. I was pleased to discover that Minkovna's restaurant had pickled cheese, a local dish that had been recommended to me. Pickled is a bit of a misnomer, though. What was served to me was a white cheese similar to feta that had been soaked in olive oil with herbs and spices, supposedly for 6 weeks. Its blandness was disappointing, and something hateful had grown in that cheese. My dinner sat fine with me that evening, but the next morning I passed a freakish albino turd. I thought, must have been all that cheese. On my 5-hour train ride back to Berlin, I took a dozen trips to the bathroom, each time peeing my life essence out of my butt. I arrived in Berlin dehydrated and dizzy. I skipped my day plans and secluded myself in my hostel room with orange juice and thoughts of whether I'd be physically strong enough to catch my flight home the next morning. I had figuratively plugged my butt with pills, so I had solved one problem, but as I later found out, I had created a new one. The bacterial infection in my intestines was thriving. The next 20 hours were a fever-soaked hell. I staggered out of bed, to the Uber, through security, to the plane. I kept going because I was on a budget airline that wouldn't let me reschedule my flight, and I couldn't afford a new one, or more nights in hostels, or foreign medical bills. On the long plane ride home, I was too tired to do anything but close my eyes and hope for sleep that never came. I wondered in my delirium whether I would make it home alive. I just wanted to live long enough so my ex-girlfriend could find my withered husk. We were still roommates at that time. She came home from work and glanced at me crumpled on the couch. She said hi, went into her room, and sobbed for half an hour, as both of us were wont to do at that time. Later, she emerged from her room and investigated why I hadn't moved from the couch. Then she drove me to the ER. As I lied in the hospital bed with an IV in my arm and her hand in mine, I thought, maybe, if I would have had a terminal illness, we could have worked. It was probably the 104-degree fever talking. I returned home plump and sweaty like a stewed prune. Antibiotics cut my recovery time down to 10 days or so. For the next couple months, I thought I was permanently lactose intolerant. So I cannot recommend Restaurant Minkovna. The pickled cheese was bland and it cost me thousands in medical bills. Thank you.